Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the 200th conversation on the virtual CISO moment. I'm so excited about it, so I decided to wear my Batman shirt today. Today, we have Caleb Mattingly as our special guest. He is the founder of Secure Cloud Innovations. Caleb, thank you so much for joining me for this 200th conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. I do have to ask, you got a guitar in the background, and that riff that was playing as we introed was pretty intense. Is that you, like?
Ha! Ha! No, 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 no. That's royalty-free music. I can't remember who it is, but if you go at least on YouTube and I think on Spotify, it'll show what the license is. Because at least on YouTube, I know I have to show the license there, otherwise they don't show it. So,
Oh, nice.
but it was one of those things where I was just going through some royalty-free stuff, and I'm like, boy, this sounds great. It's actually about a 4-minute song. It's just
Wow.
instrumental, but it's like. Can't remember what it's called. So maybe one of these days, maybe I'll do an acoustic version of it or something.
Nice. Next time, do an instant response. I'll have that playing in the background, like.
I love it. I love it. Tell me about your story. How did you get started in this whole fun stuff, and what led you to becoming an entrepreneur, founder of SCI?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I actually accidentally ended up starting SCI. So several years ago, I was working as a defense contractor, and I got into cyber like just on a whim, like working and then getting Security Plus and stuff. But I was working as a cloud cybersecurity engineer for Mantech, and I actually really like golf. Or at least used to like golf, and I wanted to play golf more often.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, I want to work, 20 hours and make what I'm making at 40. And so I ended up going on Upwork and submitted to some opportunities. And within 2 weeks, I had 50 hours of work that were that were off.
Nice.
Yeah, it was definitely unexpected and also kind of wild. But I had a buddy that wanted to get into cybersecurity, and I was like, hey, I've got an intern that could help me and stuff. I don't know that I could do 50. And one of the customers was like, hey, I'll take you both. And then we just jumped in and started doing this, and it's been a lot of ups and downs, as you can expect with small business and startups, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, what's been that's a good place to kind of like go on a little bit of a tangent. What's been one of the challenges of being a startup in the security space? We may touch on this a little bit more as we go into the second segment, but just in general, and I'll lead off by saying, I know for me, when I first started, it was kind of like a God nudge for me. I was doing fine in my job, but I got the nudge saying, Greg, you're doing fine with your talents, but you could be doing better with small and mid-sized businesses. I want you to do this. And well, I did what you're supposed to do. You say yes when you're called to do something. But I was not an entrepreneur, and I wasn't I never really thought about it. And it's just like, for me, it was like, how do I get clients and how do I position this? And I tried cold calling for about 3 days. And one challenge that I will reiterate that I learned is that this industry does not work well. What we do, trusted advisor, cold calling. So I'm just curious. You said there's been challenges. What's one that strikes out at you right now?
I think every business struggles, especially when you first start with getting customers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Unless you're like one of those rare people that's built, a huge network prior to jumping in. And even then, you could still struggle. I think I've read a lot of books about this, and there's something that's talked about a lot is that it's not actually about doing a really good job, because there's plenty of people that can do a really good job. It's about juggling all the different things while still doing a good job. And yeah, that's been kind of wild. When we first started, that customer that brought me and my intern on at the time actually went broke 3 months later, and so I immediately learned the lesson of having all your eggs, or most of your eggs, in one basket, because that was 80% of our business at the time. So it was wild, but yeah, lots of figuring out how to like interact with people, build partnerships, and then diversify was really big.
The eggs in one basket, and I know I'm on a tangent, and I'll get us back on course, I promise. But when I first started, I had every intention of just doing this myself. It's like, well,
Mm,
you get a few clients, kind of like you were saying. It's just like, I could work half the time and all that, make the same amount of money, that sort of thing. I didn't really have lofty goals as far as income goes or anything, because I've been diligent in saving over my career.
yeah.
But I found that I was getting to the point where I was starting to get too much work. And then it was just like you brought on one person. You could go one of two ways. You could either bring on people or you could limit your clients. But if you bring on people, then you have more eggs in your basket. So
Mm,
like if you have like two clients and you lose one and they're both the same, you lose 50% of your income. If you have 12,
yeah.
you lose 16, 17%. So that's a good point. I guess that was another challenge as well.
Hmm.
But I don't want to go too far down that path because I could talk about that, and we only have a limited amount of time. But I'm sure that you found that not only have you had challenges with regards to running the business, but that small and mid-sized businesses have challenges with their security programs and their threat environments and all that. So, from that perspective, in your experience, what's one or a couple of the major things that really come to mind as significant threats or challenges for them?
Yeah, great question, Greg. So we work with a lot of startups, and a lot of times what we've seen as a potential threat to businesses, and it's going to sound weird because we're on, a virtual CISO podcast right now, but is over engineering cybersecurity too early. Uh,
Yes.
and what we've seen is that like there are a lot of companies they really want to do things right.
Hmm.
Like you're selling to an enterprise, you want to look like the shiny Lamborghini of cybersecurity startup, like product and everything. And what we've noticed is essentially that if you put too much time and effort into cybersecurity too early on, it can actually hurt you because you haven't spent enough time on your product, or you haven't spent enough time or money on scaling or go to market and all of that. And there's so many things that you juggle as a startup founder. Cybersecurity should really just be, and again, a little controversial here, but like cybersecurity should be kind of like one of the secondary or tertiary parts of your business, not one of the primary pieces of what you're selling to your customer.
So I'm going to do a little thing here. This came up in an episode. I wish I could remember who said it, but um, uh, we talked about that we focus so much on frameworks as being like the advisors. It's like, okay, here's the CIS 18. I think I got the number right. It used to be 20, I think, but anyway, here's the CIS 18, and you need to follow all of these. And here's how I'm going to build your security program. That's what the security person does. Comes in, lays out the framework, bang, 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 bang. Let's get it all done. And that's not as effective as can be because, as you said, the business has so many other things. And so I used very very high technology to come up with this diagram. If you can see it. So this diagram is basically two intersecting. They're supposed to be circles, but I drew them as ovals or eggs or whatever. But you can see, if you imagine that like one of these is the framework, the other one is what the business cares about. Where you as a practitioner should be focusing is kind of like right in the middle where they intersect first. It's not to eliminate the importance of what the business is doing, obviously, because the business has to do stuff in order to be in business, and not to negate the importance of the other parts of the framework, but as far as where to focus on. And I thought that was just a great way to show it. And so I stole it. And I talk about it on the podcast. But is that sort of what you're thinking about?
Yeah, to a certain extent, it's really, and the frameworks is interesting too, because nowadays so many enterprises are asking startups like, "Hey, do you have SOC 2, or do you have ISO 27001, or HIPAA, or GDPR, or all these different things?" And we've noticed that it doesn't always apply. Like all the controls don't always apply to your business and everything. So we have some theories, and I think we're going to talk about it in a little bit. But we have some theories about like where the future of compliance and security is going to be, um, uh, and that it's not really going to be around like these frameworks in particular, but that especially with AI, we're going to see something a little bit more profound within the cybersecurity space when it comes to like determining if a startup is secure and it's going to handle data securely, because again, oh, did I drop here? Oh, there we go. Because there's just so many differences between startups, right? Like you have a fintech startup, it's totally different from a CPMG startup, or like a consumer products type of startup. And you have so many different enterprises that work with all these different companies. You can't require SOC 2 from all of them and expect them to all have the same standard of security, even though we're saying that if you have SOC 2, you have the same standard of security as this other company over here. And yeah, so we're expecting that to change pretty soon, probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
So let's talk about that for a little bit right now. And you just recently posted on LinkedIn where you say, and I'm reading from this, is like the future of compliance and security isn't necessarily the frameworks, is that as you say, you will have an AI agent that monitors the security of the enterprise, and you will have an AI agent that monitors the security of your startup. So your enterprise and their startup. And then I guess you're talking about that those AIs will talk to each other. Kind of unpack that a little bit, because I think that that's an interesting approach.
Yeah, so the theory that we have, and I don't know if it's going to be something that we get to build one day or that somebody else is going to build, but essentially we have AI that can ingest so much data all at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
So much more data that it can recall accurately without hallucinating.
And that's an actual, for those people who think it is a joke, that's an actual AI word, AI hallucination. And sometimes if like you're talking to ChatGPT, you can call them on it. It's like you say, wait, what you just said was all wrong. And ChatGPT does something like this. Oh, you're right. I made a mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. So
Right. Exactly. And so what we've seen is that AI is able to recall all this information about your business, typically more accurately and way quicker than you can, right, as a person. And so why go back and forth between a CISO and a security engineer, CISO and CISO, between a startup and enterprise, where there's the human element. And we talk a lot about like the human element being one of the biggest threats in cybersecurity, right? And like if somebody forgets something, if somebody lies to you about something, like there are definitely legal implications, but you're still choosing to do business with this company, even though they're saying these things because you can't verify it. Well, what our thought process is that with AI, and also like getting a little bit more into the weeds, integrating some blockchain pieces into this, so that it's not immutable, so that a founder can't go in and like, oh, well, actually, we do encrypt this data, even though we don't, so that the AI responds that way. We want to make sure that there's some way that it is immutable, and also there's a term in cybersecurity for, and I'm totally blanking on it right now, about non-repudiation. That's what it is, non-repudiation. And so being able to ensure non-repudiation between the enterprise and the startup that they want to work with, so that the security is in and of itself kind of ensured. So that your enterprise can say to its AI, I want these things in any vendor that we work with. And then that AI can go to the startup's AI and be like, hey, do you have these things? And then it says, yes, or no, we don't have those things. And then you get a risk score. And then you can actually determine, as an enterprise, do I want to work with this startup or not?
how would you sell that to the startup? Because I can almost see, like you said, as far as like blockchain, you won't be able to go back and say, well, yes, we had this policy in place 6 months ago. That might scare some folks. I'm not calling out their ethics, but the bottom line is that sometimes people, they're afraid to lock themselves into something, particularly if they don't understand. And so they have to be sold. They have to be taught to understand what this is, and how it can potentially create more business. So how would you sell that to them? The
That's a good
concept.
question. So I would say that right now, like, and I'm going to kind of circle back to answer the question in a second. So humans sit between like the policies and procedures and then the actual technical implementation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't see each other, right? Like your AWS environment doesn't see the policies that you have in place. You see both of those things and you're the one implementing it. Well, like again, that creates room for error. And so what we would say is, you would essentially be able to have, as a startup, you'd have your AI, you can update it, right? Like you can click update in some manner, and it'll look and verify like, hey, have things changed, so that you can actually state like, hey, we are encrypting things, or we are doing third-party vendor risk management in some manner. But I think the way that I would sell it would be probably the same way that SOC 2 is being sold right now, right? Like you get enterprises that demand, we're not going to sign a paid contract with you, little startup, until you get SOC 2 in place, or until you get ISO in place, or until you get GDPR in place. And I think you start with the bigger fish, right? And then the bigger fish essentially dictate what it takes to do business with them. Because a lot of startups that we work with, their main clientele, their ICP, or ideal client profile, is enterprise businesses. And in order to do business with them, they have to get those frameworks in place. So that would be my, like, I guess, go to market strategy if I was to build this.
Yeah, and that kind of plays into what I see as a big problem that we have in our industry. We tend to sometimes spend too much time, I think, if with bigger organizations and their third-party risk management. And I'm not negating the importance of that whatsoever. But whenever you have like a big breach, I'll go step back in time 12 years to Target. All you heard in the news was like Target breach, Target breach, Target breach, when really the actual breach began with a HVAC refrigeration company or something vendor in Pennsylvania. And then that breach through trusted connection VPN. And
Right,
you know the rest of the story.
yeah.
Yet today, even we as an industry, and I mean we as an industry, the information security industry, the practitioners, we tend to still focus a whole lot more on the larger organizations. You go to conferences, and most of the stuff involved with conferences is all geared towards larger organizations, and that's because that's where the money is. But if we could just like solve the posture of the smaller organizations, then or at least increase the posture, then that helps. And from what I'm hearing from you, is like at the very least right now, what we're seeing more is like the large organizations demanding some sort of third-party attestation to the SOC 2, or maybe an actual audit of controls, performance to a framework like ISO. Do you see that continuing in the future? And as a side note, has the SOC 2 become too much of a check the box thing, or is it losing its effectiveness because it's being used for gaining business?
It's a good question. In our industry right now, we have generally come to the conclusion, and I say we as in like most VCSOs and even most small businesses know, that SOC 2 is kind of a commodity. It's like a pay to play piece now, where like you can't get the enterprise contract if you don't have SOC 2 or ISO. And one of the frustrations right now that we're seeing in the industry too is that you can go get it because your customer tells you that you need it in order to do business with them, and still not get the contract because that wasn't the actual barrier that the enterprise customer had about wanting to use your product, right? They just use it as like a reason not to do business with you. And so I don't think that, and this is why the AI piece that I posted about on LinkedIn that you referenced, that's why I posted about that, is because I don't think that SOC 2 is going to be around forever. I think
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, and I think AI CPA has done a really great job of propagating it amongst enterprises, which then propagates it to startups. But one of the things that comes up in a lot of conversations that we have with startups is, why doesn't AWS or Azure or GCP just essentially make you create SOC 2 compliant or ISO compliant infrastructure from the get-go, or like just secure infrastructure from the get-go?
Right.
Like, what is the point of allowing you to make unencrypted databases? Is it runtime, like latency? Is that why some companies apparently don't care about the data that's in a database? That and I have a lot of conversations with people about that, because they go, okay, well, we are SOC 2 compliant already because we use AWS. It's like, no,
Not
AWS,
really.
yeah, AWS's
Yeah.
data center and their business is SOC 2 compliant, but that doesn't make your business SOC 2 compliant. And unfortunately, like, there's like a mismatch, I guess, of what that really means. And then there's also just a lot of, I would say, oddity in the cloud industry, especially, of just not catering towards these compliance frameworks for startups to begin with. So then they don't have to worry about putting that stuff into place, because it takes a lot of time, a lot of engineering hours, and then redesigning too. Because like, once you create an EC2 instance in AWS, with an EBS volume on it. If that EBS volume isn't encrypted, you got to turn the EC2 instance off, detach the EBS volume, make a snapshot of it, encrypt like an encrypted version of that, reattach it to the EC2 instance, turn it back on, which
I've
creates
done it. I actually understand what you're talking about. I've done
yeah,
it.
and it
Which is
creates
weird for me to say that I've done something technical like that recently. So,
but it creates downtime for them, right? Like for the person that's trying
and risk of maybe something going wrong because
and
you're
risk.
you're doing all these things to your critical information. What if something gets screwed up? And then your downtime goes from hours to days, which is lack of money there or loss of money there.
Exactly. And so I would say, to anybody that's listening to this too, like if you're planning to build on AWS or you're building on AWS, you can turn EBS volume encryption to default on, but that's not set to default on by default. So like it's like weird
And
things
it
like
should
that.
be. Yeah, those sorts of things that like MFA should be on by default. You have to actually think about turning it off and
Yeah,
do something to turn it off as opposed to. So you can, I guess you could distill this down to is like you would have to, today you have to think to increase posture. We want to get to a point to think, you have to think to decrease posture, basically.
100%,
And then
100%.
that way the businesses understand it. They understand the friction is taken away. And also that gets back to what we were talking about in the beginning, where they can focus now on the things that really matter to their business, something outside of the two intersections of that two circle Venn diagram, security wise, is already taken care of now by the AWS. They don't have to worry about that. It's taken care of by how they're using AWS because we know that it's already a secure enclave, if you will. I mean, I like that. And I think that we need more thinking in our industry to get to that point.
100%.
And I have no doubt, the other thing that had come to mind is I have no doubt that the SOC 2 process will continue to evolve because it wasn't too long ago, at least in my mind, that we didn't have SOC 2s. We had the only third party attestation that we really had was the AICPA SAS 70, which eventually migrated into a SOC 1, which was really back then was more about financial controls that had some security aspects. And so we would look at those reports, but then we have like a whole slew of other questions about their program. So I think you're right. I think it's going to evolve more, and we'll get to a better place, but we're still not there yet. So
Yeah, for sure.
but there's a lot of stress involved with all of this because I know just you spend a lot of time, effort, you put your heart into what you do because you have passion. You want to see businesses increase their posture as much as possible and still like be effective in running their business. And it can be stressful. You got a lot of pressure put on top of you, layer on top of that being an entrepreneur. You need to figure out a way to step away, to decompress. And I always try to emphasize on this podcast to do something that's healthy to do that. What's one of the things you do, Caleb, to decompress from the stress?
My wife says I'm a hobbyist. And I did mention golf earlier, but I play guitar as well. So I like music. I like playing like a drone. Yeah, like some sort of drone in the background. And then just, tabbing over that, playing like different modes and stuff. That I found that to be pretty helpful. It's like a creative outlet and everything. But I love to read. Science fiction is a huge love of mine. Huge fan of Heinlein. And
Okay. There
yeah,
can be only one. I guess that's what you're talking about. Highland or Highlander?
Heinlein.
Oh, okay. Two
Robert
different things.
Heinlein. Robert Heinlein. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking Highlander, where they chop off the heads and all that. So,
His most famous book that turned into a movie was Starship Troopers, but
oh, okay.
the movie was a little rough. So yeah, I love to read, love playing guitar, I like going on walks with my wife and hiking. Yeah, it's fun. I also brew beer, but yeah.
I form a hobby of mine. I used to brew beer. I don't drink anymore, but I enjoyed the process of doing that. I used to love IPAs.
Oh,
And
okay.
so my best recipe that I put together, and I would share it with my security friends. I called it APT IPA.
Ooh, nice.
And believe me, it was an advanced persistent threat. Trust me.
Very cool. Very cool.
And if you had to choose, because biggest franchises, two biggest sci-fi franchises in history, Star Trek, Star Wars, which one?
Ooh. Oh, I'm pretty torn. I don't know. I really like the redone versions of Star Trek, like the new movies and everything.
Hmm.
Um, Especially that first movie, the Sabotage by the Beastie Boys when that's playing and he's driving the car like towards the
Oh,
cliff.
as a kid, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Anytime I hear that song, I think of that movie. So it's very it's prominent. But Star Wars is such a classic. I don't know if I had to pick. I'd probably pick the original three movies of Star Wars. So 4, 5.
I could go with that. I could go with that. I'm in the middle of watching every single Star Trek
Oh, nice.
production. I started at the beginning of COVID
Ooh,
and riding my indoor trainer, and I'm in the middle of season 3 of Star Trek Discovery now. So it's like I'm getting close towards the end. Of course, Strange New Worlds is coming out with a new season in about a month. So
nice.
that's part of my future plan is more Star Trek. But what's part of your future plans?
Future plans. So actually, I'm an avid like rocket science lover. And so in the future, if all works out, I would like to spend more time on like model rockets too. So, recently had my first kid, and so my plan is to teach him safely, eventually, about how to do model rockets. So that'll be really fun.
Did you ever watch the original Battlestar Galactica?
Oh, I did. I definitely watched the original Battlestar Galactica.
So I had one of those Vipers, the model kits. I don't remember who. I'm. It's on the tip of my tongue. The group that made this, but anyway. So I
Mm.
had one of those kits when I was a kid, and eventually got to the point where it's like I don't really want this anymore. And I was in model rocketry for a little bit, and as it would work out, the three engines on the back of the Viper were about the same size as little rocket canisters, and so yeah, I launched that Viper.
Oh
It
man.
didn't work too well. It's like I guess I didn't think about structural integrity because when I fired it, it's like the engines went through the cockpit of the Viper.
Oh, no. Yeah, they don't show that scene in the Battlestar Galactica.
No, no. Well, hey, Caleb, it's been a great time talking with you. I some great ideas about how to help small and mid-sized businesses with regards to their posture, and that's what we really need in our industry is thinking more. I hate using like worn out terms like think outside the box, but we do need to constantly be thinking about different ways to approach it. And you've given us a lot of good stuff to think about. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Greg. Appreciate you having me on the podcast. So.
No worries. It's a lot of fun, and everybody stay secure.